Take your notes. By the way, I got that DARB this morning on a text message from a former student, Grace Moses. Is a wonderful young woman, and she sent me a DARB and a very encouraging text. I'm sorry. So we're going to start by reading the whole thing like we always do, and then we'll come back from there. And we are in John 9:39 to John 10:21. And we did part of this last week, but that was last week, so we're going to kind of start over here. But remember, I told you last week that at the beginning of this lesson, we are in John 10. And it is very close to the time for Jesus to be arrested and tried and crucified. And to just kind of give you a time stamp, John 10 is this story of the Good Shepherd. And then in John 11, we have the story of Lazarus, which was maybe maybe 2-3 weeks before his death, before Jesus' death. And then in chapter 12, we have the triumphal entry. This is Sunday. It's the Sunday before the Friday that Jesus will be crucified. So now we're less than a week out. Now, you know that there are, I think, 24 chapters in John, and we are in 10. So we will go quickly through some of this. But this is usually where we are in this place at this time each year. So let's go through it, and then we'll come back and walk through it. Jesus said, "For judgment I came into this world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees near him heard these things and said to him, "Are we also blind?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say we see, your guilt remains." So this is just after the healing of the man born blind. Now he's going to get into the sheep thing. "So truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers." This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. Misunderstanding? So Jesus again said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand who cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up. This charge I have received from my Father." There was again a division among the Jews because of these words. Many of them said, "He has a demon and is insane. Why listen to him?" Others said, "These are not the words of one who is oppressed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind?" So we started here with this heading, blind sinners. And I talked to you about the Jewish leadership not understanding what Jesus was saying, and I gave you this saying that says, as long as a person thinks he or she is all right, he or she is all wrong, and that's true. And I do believe that most people, especially in the Western world, think they're fine. They're basically good people. And so that's all it is. That's all you need to do. As long as your good outweighs your bad, you're in. And in many religions, that's kind of true. But that's not the standard of Christianity. And he says there's only one door, right? And Jesus says, and we'll read this later on in John 14, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. You can't work your way to it. But most people, as I said, especially in the Western world, think their good outweighs their bad. And they'll get in. So 51%, 49%. If you got a 51% on a test, would you say, hey, at least I didn't get a 49, right? No, you would not be happy, and your parents would be less happy, unhappy, right? Or less happy. Yeah, it's still a failing grade. But I don't even think. I mean, I'm a Bible teacher, but I'm a dirty, rotten sinner deserving hell, right? And if everything, every word, every action, every thought that I've had or done that was sinful, I don't know if I'd have 51. And I don't think many people would. There have been several times in my life where I have thought, that's the worst thing I've ever thought. And then I have another one, right? And I only remember the first one when I thought that. But we are all dirty, rotten sinners deserving hell, and we can't get there on our own merit. It would be like asking a 1-year-old to tie his shoes and get angry at him for not doing it. It doesn't make sense, and we can't. We can't be perfect because that's the standard. The standard is not 51%. The standard is perfection, and we can't get there from here. So only Christ can do that. And I told you about Mel Goebel, who said it is easier to convince a convict for its need of Jesus than the average middle or upper middle class American. I think that's true because they know they've messed up. And they know they need a savior. Some of them, at least. But the average American thinks they're fine. And that's sad because they don't realize it. There was this saying in the 70s that, and it was on shirts and stuff, I'm okay, you're okay. I think what's true is not I'm okay, you're okay. What I think is true is I'm not okay, and you aren't okay. But that's okay because of what Jesus has done for us. And that's the only way we can be okay is through Christ. So we tend to give ourselves so you know how some people have a wrong view of their body. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And they have a distortion in what they look like. I think we do that spiritually. I think spiritually we think we're better than we really are, but that's not what is really true. The truth is that we can't meet the standard. None of us can. Not even Mrs. Schrock. And I love what people say. Well, I'm not that bad. I've never killed anybody. That's a high bar, isn't it? Great, you're not an axe murderer. Go to heaven. That's not the standard. The standard is 100%. So they need to understand what is true. So now we're going to talk about thieves and robbers. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief or a robber. We talked about this yesterday, but I want to first talk to you about sheepfolds. So a sheepfold is a place of shelter for the sheep. It was a place where they could be safe, where they could sleep without an attack from either a wild animal or rustlers trying to steal the sheep. And it was often kind of a low, flat building that was surrounded by a stone wall. This is not an ancient sheepfold. It's a modern day sheepfold. But some of them looked something like that. And it was a place where the sheep could be safe. And the shepherd cared for the sheep, and the shepherds do care for their sheep. And in fact, they have a very close relationship. The sheep know their shepherd, and they know his voice, and they won't listen to anyone else. I'm going to show you a video tomorrow about that. That the shepherd or someone who's not the shepherd tries to get the sheep to come, and then the shepherd and they don't, and then the shepherd comes, and they come, and so they don't listen to any other voice. Wouldn't that be great if we only listened to God's voice? But to do that, we have to discern and know his voice. So, we think of them as dumb animals, the sheep, but they're not really. Now, not every sheepfold was like this, probably not very many, but when they were away from the sheepfold, at night they would take shelter in a cave or in a courtyard or some place like that where they could have some relative thickets would be another one, thorn bushes would be another, that they could have some sort of protection when they were away from the sheepfold. But every sheepfold had one thing in common: one door, one way in, one way out. And that is true for Christians as well. There is only one way. A lot of people say, well, that's not fair. There should be many ways. First of all, God doesn't have to listen to us and do what we tell him to say. But the other thing is that logically, there can only be one way. We're going to talk about this next year. But this is not scripture. This is logic. Logically, there can only be one way. There could be no ways. But if there is a way, there can't be more than one. Here's why. All of the religions of the world have beliefs, right? And all of them contradict one another. Either Jesus is the way or Allah is the way, but it can't be Jesus and Allah because they say different things. And both things can't be true at the same time. In Islam, Jesus is a prophet. That's all he is. He's a prophet. He's not the Son of God. He's not God in the flesh. He's not, and that's either true or it's false. But they can't both be true. They could both be false, but they can't both be true. And so we have this truth of our shepherd, and we're going to talk more about that as we get through this. And then the gatekeeper was the one that kind of made sure that nobody got into the sheepfold that would hurt the sheep. So let's talk about the definition of a sheep. So we talked about that as a shelter. It's a place of shelter, the sheepfold, and then I described it to you. So the definition of a thief is one who breaks into a house to steal. Usually enters somewhere other than the door, right? They break into that house. And I told you how my sister and I broke into our parents' house at the time. And the cops came running. The alarm went off and they came. And we were, what it says here, I'll tell you what it says here. Like, if you're caught entering your own house or someone else's through a window, no, that's not what I wanted to say. So if this happened, you would be explaining why you were doing such a suspicious thing. And that's exactly what we did. No, this is really our house. This is my husband, Marty and Danny Holiday. We can tell you their phone number. We can tell you everything about them. We didn't know how to turn the off alarm. We just got the alarm, and we did all of that. And he believed us, and we weren't in the back of a cop car, but we got out of it. But that's exactly what you would do too, if you were innocent and they were thinking you were burglarizing your own home. So because Jesus is the door, everyone who tries to get to heaven by any other way must be a thief or robber. And this statement by Christ was clear and definite. And it was an accusation of the Pharisees who were not truly spiritual. They believed they were, but they weren't. They were thieves. They were robbers. They were making people less close to God, not making them closer to God. So we're going to make sure. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to talk about some other religions. We're just going to start with one today. You'll have probably a little time left because this is as far as I got with my other classes. And I'm going to talk about Buddhism first. And I need to tell you that I'm going to talk about Buddhism in more detail when you're seniors. So this is just going to be the kind of Reader's Digest version of Buddhism. And in your senior year, we'll deep dive into it. So I've told you that I taught world religions at Millard North for several years. And I'm going to tell you a story about that in a minute. But that's how I know what I know about these religions. So Buddhism is based on the Four Noble Truths. I'm going to write that on. I should have written that. Oh, I already did. I did. Yeah, right there. Good. Thank you. So Four Noble Truths. So the Four Noble Truths are this: that existence, life, involves suffering. I believe that's a true statement. I do too. Yeah, we all suffer in life, don't we? Some more, some less, but we all suffer. The second one is that the cause of suffering is desire. I think that's true. I think desire can cause suffering, but I don't think it's the cause of suffering. But we won't get into that right now. So the existence involves suffering, and the cause of suffering is desire. And then this is the third statement: the release from suffering comes from ending desire. So what they're saying is, if you just don't desire anything, you will never suffer. I have two knees that alternately decide to be nice to me or mean to me. Sometimes they're both mean to me at the same time. That was the case the last couple of days, and it was excruciating. And what Buddhism would tell me is, well, if you just don't have a desire to not be in pain, you won't suffer. Yeah.
You don't desire to not walk.
Yeah, right. I wish I could walk better, but I can't. So here's the thing. Then once you do that, once you get rid of desire, then that's when you hit nirvana. But they also add on do's and don'ts. Every other religion does that, right? So it's called the Eightfold Path, or the Middle Path is maybe the way you've heard it. So this is the Eightfold Path. It involves right understanding, right mindedness, right speech, right action, right living, right effort, right attentiveness, and right concentration. So those last two have to do with meditation. So if you get all of that, if you do all of that perfectly, when you die, you go poof into the universe. There's no existence after that. You just become part of the universe. Anybody ready to sign up for it yet? And part of how they get to that state, a big part of it is meditation. There's nothing wrong with meditation. It's predicated on what you're meditating about. Because we're called to meditate on God and His Word, right? So that can't be wrong, but what you're meditating about can be. And their meditation isn't so much like really thinking hard about something. It's more like emptying your mind of any thoughts. It's kind of Star Wars. So it's not really concentrating on something. It's getting rid of everything. So, well, go ahead.
I mean, like Star Wars, like when they die, they become
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, it's not like you have an existence. So every year at Millard North, I would bring in the man that was the head of the Buddhist community in Omaha. I don't even know if he's living anymore, but his name was or is Gordon Becker. And one year, and he'd come in and he'd talk about Buddhism, and then he'd take questions. And one year there was this young man, this senior, named Jason. Oh, Jason, I used to see him all the time. He was in my FCA and I knew his wife and all that. And they just came back to our church about, I don't know, 3 months ago. And they're going to church, so I see him every Sunday. But the first thing I told him is, I talk about you every year in my classes. He's like, what? And I told him what I'm about to tell you. So we get to the Q&A, and Jason asks a question. He asks, so are you there? Have you become perfect? Have you become completely enlightened? And his answer was telling. He said, well, sometimes I still struggle. I don't know, I'm not there yet, but when I really get in trouble, I pray to God. And I'm like, if you need a backup for your religion, maybe you need a different religion, right? If it's not going to give you salvation, you're not sure about that, right? Now, I'm not telling you guys if you're having any sort of doubts about it. We all have doubts. But our faith is predicated on truth over and over and over again. And by next year, by the end of next year, you will have lots of ammunition to know that your faith is true, and our faith is true. But that just astounded me that he would admit that no, I'm not really. I don't really know if I'm going to go poof into the universe. We can know, even as sinners, we can know that we will live with God forever. Love Him. It's not about what we did, what we do. It's about what Christ has already done for us. So that's we're going to stop here. But I will tell you that we're going to talk about Hinduism, and we're going to talk about Islam, and then we're going to have a couple of videos. We're going to have we're going to have some people talking about this, and not from a Christian perspective. It's going to be interesting. But what I'm trying to get you to do, this is where we're headed. I want you to be able to discern what is true and what is false. And the only way I know to do that well is to know the truth really well. So we're gonna test out how we do that as we go through the rest of this lecture. Yes.
This
Not to my knowledge. I not that I've ever heard. But I mean, if God wants to give me another name, I'll do it. I'll even do it. I won't be upset about that. Yeah, it's good thought. It's good thought. I love those kinds of questions. Okay, so that's it. You can chat.